So the first one off the bat is Albert Pike is kind of the father of American Freemasonry, and one of the slogans of Scottish Rite Freemasonry in particular is Order ab Chaos, which means order out of chaos. So the conspiracy theorist version of this, which I do think has some grit, is that Masons create chaos in order to establish order from it.
Las distracciones y narrativas reinan este mundo tecnológico. Todos tienen una opinión de lo que es la verdad y lo que es mentira. ¿Quién controla el mundo? Los aliens son real. ¿Vivimos en un Matrix? Estas preguntas serán debatidas con José y Daniel G, explorando y descubriendo las verdades de nuestro mundo, nuestras creencias y nuestro reality. Welcome to Cultura Truth Project. Estamos de vuelta. Welcome back, mi gente.
Another episode, my people. Otro episodio. Oh my God, I'm excited. I'm excited. I don't know what to do with myself.
Estamos listos. Estamos ready. Welcome back to Cultura Truth Project. Aquí te habla José G, José González, mi hermano, in real life. Y tengo que clarificarlo. Every time I have to clarify it, that we are real brothers. Daniel.
Legit. I mean, Jose changed my diapers when I was a child, so, you know.
I don't think the public really needed to know that, bro.
But, you know, sometimes, you know, I get inappropriate, so it's fine. It's okay. It wasn't disgusting. It was just, you know, family bonding time. Family bonding.
Bueno, mi gente, el episodio de hoy va a ser mayormente en inglés.
Para los gringos.
Because we brought on a pretty awesome guest today. But I can't, bro, we made it to episode 3. Estamos aquí todavía, and we're going to keep going. And maybe after today, bro, you're going to learn that you may not want to do that hand sign anymore.
Oh, I know. Hold on. Number 3. Sorry, 3. Hold on, the European 3. Not the weird white power 3. I know what it means, bro. Come on now.
So, mi gente, so today we brought on a guest. He is a comic book artist who covers a lot of the occult. He covers a lot of the secret society. He does a lot of book reviews on the occult, covering, you know, like Bohemian Grove and Freemasons, Illuminati, things like that. He's done a lot of collabs, with the Donut Factory, with one of our guests, with our first guest, with the Juan on Juan podcast, with Juan Ayala, with Tommy Truthful, and even with Sam Tripoli, bro. So even, I mean, there's a connection. You got a connection with Sam. He's got connection with Sam. He's got some really cool projects coming out. The Chaos Twins comic with Sam Tripoli. He's also got the Chosen Juan comic book featuring Juan Ayala that's coming back. Well, let's welcome him to the show. His name is Thomas, the Paranoid American. What's up, Thomas? Welcome to the show.
Oh my God. It's the comic book villain of all comic book villains. Welcome. Dude, give us your best villain laugh real quick, man.
Love it. And that's just the thumbnail. Check it out. That's the thumbnail.
That's the thumbnail. Oh my God.
For the YouTube audience, that's the thumbnail right there. Looks like a straight up anime Street Fighter, you know, final boss level character. But I love it. Thomas, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on, bro. How you doing today?
Good. I feel like more like a sub boss, but I appreciate being like a full-fledged video game boss.
Bro, I mean, look at that majestic beard. I mean, with that, I mean, how can you deny being a final boss? I want to call you a sub boss, bro.
It does look sharp. It looks like it could hurt you.
Dude, it's definitely looks like you've, you know, done some weird occult magic in that anime to get that beard. So let's dive right into it. Like there's so much. Like I was doing research on you earlier today, and we got the Sam Tripoli connection. I'm a stand-up. I know Sam through stand-up. I don't know him through the tinfoil stuff. Obviously, I know enough about him through the tinfoil stuff. But like I've performed with him out in Austin, and I've done a bunch of other stuff. And man, how'd you get connected with Sam? I guess that's my first question.
It's funny because I know Sam through comic book stuff and not necessarily through stand-up. And I mean, clearly through Tinfoil Hat, because I went on to one of their shows. I think they had a guest that was going to talk about occult Disney. And whatever happened, they weren't able to make that show, and I was the backup. I was the understudy. But I came prepared because I had worked at Disney for over 10 years in the animation department on the back lot of Disney here in Orlando, Florida. It's called now Hollywood Studios, I think. But when I started, it was like MGM Studios.
Oh yeah,
back in the Disney. Back in the Disney.
So that I had a little bit of clout from that, but I wasn't really up to date on every single Disney property and cartoon ever. So I did a whole bunch of deep dives and went onto the show, and I guess they liked it enough that we talked about it again. And that actually spawned a whole series. So I've got another podcast that I've been doing for the last year called Occult Disney. And
Wow.
we basically rewatch every single classic Disney animation feature-length movie from start to end. And right now we think we just crossed Toy Story, which is like late 90s. So at this point, I do feel like I'm somewhat of a Disney occult expert because I've seen it all. I've took notes. I've got the receipts.
Mi gente, before we continue with the podcast and with the interview today, Paranoid, where can the people find you? Plug your stuff in really quick. Where can the people find you on socials and all the stuff, man?
Paranoid American on everything. ParanoidAmerican.com. And then the only place it's different is on Twitter because there's not enough letters. So it's just Paranoid America.
Gotcha. And there's the website, guys. You lo pueden chequear. You guys can. He has a bunch of stuff there, guys. He's got comics. You guys see the Chosen Juan series there, time samplers. He's got the Chaos Twins coming out pretty soon. So make sure you guys grab yourself a copy, stickers, all the good stuff. Check it out, paranoidamerican.com. And then he also has the Paranoid American YouTube channel. So make sure you guys check it out and subscribe.
And I've got on the stickers section on the site, I've got a Yaritos parody sticker that might be particularly appropriate for the crowd.
I mean, I'm just saying, I'm gonna put this out there now. You should make a Cultura Truth Project deal.
Listen, we were talking yesterday. We were already talking about doing some collabs and some crossover stuff with Spanish and dubbing. But maybe later down the road, maybe we get our own Cultura Truth Project comic and be featured with the Juan and Juan podcast. I don't know. That'll be cool.
Dude, I'd be happy with a dope sticker. You know what I'm saying? I'd be happy with a dope sticker, something we can stick on everywhere.
And you get a little taste as that sticker, and then you're like, oh, what about a pamphlet? Oh, what about a comic?
Guys, mi gente, go ahead and follow Paranoid American at YouTube and paranoidamerican.com. So Thomas, let's get started, bro. Being a comic book artist, being a content creator, just like us, you've been in the game now for a bit, but you talked about Disney, you talked about the occult Disney part, but tell me about like how your transition went from like working in corporate America and then now covering the occult, covering social, secret societies in your work with comic books and your graphic design, man.
I mean, so I've always been the latter. I've always been into occult and conspiracies since day one. So I brought it with me into the corporate world. In fact, I brought it with me into the military. Out of the military, I got into the recording industry. Out of the recording industry, I got into animation. And then once I basically joined Disney, worked there for about 10 years. It was fun, but I saw that I could make a lot more doing just boring corporate software development stuff. So I did that for the next 10 to 15. And now I'm just doing the comic book thing to see how it works out. I can always dip my toe back into any of these industries that I've been in. Software development pays the most, but it's also just like turn your brain off and crunch numbers all day. And man, I would just love to be reading about conspiracy theory. Like you see what I'm doing now, the content I'm finding video games about conspiracy theories and playing them. I'm finding books about it. I'm finding children's books about it. And I'm just trying to go as hard in the paint as I can to cover as much of this content that no one else is covering.
Yeah, you're definitely doing some stuff that nobody else is doing, bro. Like, and to go back to Danny's question, you said you've always been involved or into the conspiracy space and into the occult. What sparked that, bro? Like, how did it all begin for Thomas the Paranoid American?
I mean, I feel like I just grew up in the right time period, man. I grew up when the DuckTales Ask About Illuminati cartoon was playing to like me as the intended age group. You know what I mean? And I was around for when X-Files had first come out, primetime. That was a huge influence. That was the whole concept of the government's lying to you. But that was almost like the most common knowledge of all. You could be the most normie person in the world, goody two shoes, like doesn't do anything, never said a bad word in their lives in the 90s, and you ask them, hey, is the government lying to us? Like, yeah, fuck yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're good. No, you're good. We curse on this show. You're good.
So I'm thinking like in that time period, everyone by default seemed like they were at least a conspiracy theorist or distrustful of the government. But over time, that has been sort of turned into this like polarizing approach where now being a conspiracy theorist or maybe even to a cult is supposed to take on like, oh, that means that you're under this political flag or you're under this religious flag because you follow this thing. And I don't think it was as specific, at least back in the 90s, even prior to Occupy Wall Street. Before that, if you question 9/11 or if you question any conspiracy theory, you were just kind of in like this amorphous apolitical blob. Maybe people thought you were crazy, but you were just in like the conspiracy theory crowd. Now you come out and you're like, yeah, I don't know if January 6th was real. That might have been staged. It's like, oh, you're voting for Trump, aren't you, buddy? It turns into an immediate, like someone just planted the flag. And so when I got into it, that didn't exist. So it felt like it was a little bit more approachable, and it almost felt like a fish in water. Like everywhere you looked, everyone was questioning this because everyone was watching X-Files. It was the best show ever. You know what I mean? But now it's almost like people are like, I either believe in conspiracy theories, yes, or I don't believe in them at all, no. And it's like this weird binary switch when really it's, I've heard one of the comedians mention that like that would be the weirdest conspiracy theory of all time if none of them were true. Like not a single one was ever true and everything was just happenstance.
I love how you put that, right? Like Jose and I are very similar in that way. We grew up questioning the world, questioning everything around us, right? But especially as a comedian, I have to think in that fashion. It's like, what is the truth? What's funny about this? What are the potential, ramifications of what can be said? And like you mentioned, the whole January 6th thing, and one of the greatest comics I've ever seen perform live, Mr. Neighbors. He literally, I remember him talking about it the day it happened, and he was like, dude, it was like a bunch of Vikings just wanting to hunt down Pelosi. And you're like, but what happened? And it was an amazing, the way comedians break it down as it happens is very, very different than the news, right? Like we see it for the ridiculousness that it is, and we question the motives of what happens. And I think, at least from my perspective, I think that we all should look at things how they're happening and question it. Doesn't necessarily mean you're like a hardcore conspiracy theorist, but you're just like, hey, well, there's something more here than what's happening, and why are we doing here? Which leads me to my question, man. You are big into this occult and all this stuff. Part of the research, template that we did for you is that you're Freemason. Or which you're the second Freemason on this podcast, and it's only been 3 episodes, FYI.
Which isn't it hilarious that on the 3rd episode we bring a Freemason? I'm just saying, the number 3. I mean,
who ranks
love
higher?
The number 3.
Who's the truly highest ranking Freemason?
As of right now, I have no idea because I don't know what degree you are. But with that said, where does the Freemasonry society / fraternity, whatever it is, right? Because there's like Black Freemasons, there's college Freemasons, there's the people in the middle of the town square Freemasons. I don't know what to think about it, but I do know that it's everywhere And I would like to know what your opinion is on some of this stuff, man.
What was
I guess-
the last part?
Oh no, my mic is stupid. My bad. No, like with all the different types of Freemasons out there, you know, the ones in college, the Black Freemasons, the ones that you see in the middle of every town square, are they all related, or is it just like some people are fake Freemasons, or they're like real Freemasons?
So there's definitely lots of fake Freemasons of all flavors and kinds. So the main fake, well, let's start fake and we'll edge towards real. So the fakest of the fake
Edge me slow, sir. Edge me
are the
slow.
ones that just straight up, yeah, we'll edge you slowly. Let me know when it's time to like really tease it. So the fakest of the fake are the ones that know that they're being fake, that are like have never gone through any initiation, have never done any studies. They just figure, hey, if I say that I'm a Freemason, people will believe it because they're not. So how would they know? And then those things can keep escalating. And there was a few news stories, maybe like 10 years ago now, but there was like this fraternal police group that was somehow connected to, I want to say Kamala Harris, but like a cousin of a cousin of a cousin type of connection, like not a direct one, but that they had set up this like completely fake Freemasonic / police fraternal organization. And so that's the fakest version where like they know they're doing it, they're faking it out. Then you've got people that are into, I guess you could say, irregular masonry. So that's like you might join and think you're doing all the right things, and you paid the money, and you wore the fancy hat, and you did it all. But then you might find out later that the lodge that conferred those degrees to you, they weren't like an official lodge. It's almost like you get swindled and go in one of those schools, and then you're like, go to another school, and you're like, here's my transcript. Tell me how many credits transfer. Like, we're sorry to tell you that school was not accredited, so 0. Like, you might as well have just never gone to school at all. Wow. So that's another version of fake Freemasonry where people might not even realize it. Also, like as far as I know, any Freemasonic group that admits women in the United States falls into this co-masonry / irregular masonry field. It doesn't include Eastern Star. That's its own thing. So those are the main types of fake. And then you mentioned like Black Freemasons. So that's specific, called Prince Hall Freemasonry. And that was because for the longest time, the segregation in this country went as far as you could see. You know what I mean? So you could still be a Freemason if you were Black, but it was almost like going to the water fountain. Like you had to go to the Black Freemason Lodge. You couldn't go to the White Freemason Lodge. And it was intentionally segregated like that for the longest time. And I think that that's on its death knells now. Like pretty much that's been phased out. But the last time that I personally looked in the state of Florida to have a Prince Hall Mason visit a White Lodge, they'd have to like write a letter and get it approved. And like you kind of have to ask permission and get it approved through the routes in order for it to happen like the right way. So asterisk, right? Like it's over, asterisk. But because for the longest time you had to be in Prince Hall Masonry, there's still very much as like a heavy majority of Black people that join Prince Hall exclusively and white people that join non-Prince Hall, although those things are not exclusive anymore. Joel Thomas, that you guys might know from Merkle Media, he actually joined a Black Prince Hall Mason Lodge. So did that one dude from Green Day or Blink-182 or whatever, the Disclosure UFO dude. Apparently
Travis, is it Travis, right? Travis, the Travis
think
dude.
So.
Yeah,
I think so. Well, and I think he joined like a Prince Hall Masonry and vice. So it's a regular, or sorry, it's atypical, not a regular, because a regular and Masonry means something very specific. That's like the fake Freemasonry. So Prince Hall is real. And then as you start inching towards, then you've got regular old Masonry, which is degrees 1 through 3. Then you've got the York Rite Masonry, which what they call lateral degrees. So in regular Masonry, you've got degree 1, and then right above it, almost like stair steps, the entered apprentice is 1, then you've got fellow craft is 2, and then you've got master mason is 3. So that's actually escalating, right? Like 2 is higher than 1, 3 is higher than 2. But once you get to the 3rd degree, according to most sources, but it's debatable, everything else is lateral. It's almost if you imagine if you went to the Cub Scouts and you earned 50 badges, right? No one of those badges means that you're more of a Cub Scout or a higher level Cub Scout than someone else. They have that other ranking. That's like the Weeblos and the Pueblos or whatever the hell the names are. Eagle Scout, right? Like those are the actual ranks. Everything else are the little patches that you just put on your shirt. So you can get all the way to Eagle Scout and higher technically and not have every single patch, just like you could have every single patch but never make it to Eagle Scout. And that's kind of how Freemasonry works in a really vague way. When you say college Freemasons, I don't think that's an actual thing. You might be talking about the Greek system, and that's the system of like initiations and all these extra rituals, but that's not inherently Freemasonic. What that is, it's just another allusion to the ancient mystery schools, which Freemasonry also sees itself as being, but that's a completely separate thing from Greek fraternities.
Wow.
That's a very interesting how you explain that, how, you know, because from an outsider, the normies, just to say it for the outsider that doesn't look into this stuff, you know, third degrees, right? But then when you start opening the book and you start looking more into Freemasonry and the occult and things into that aspect, you start finding more levels, right? So you know, we hear about like the Scottish Rite, we hear about 33-degree level Freemasons. And at this point in the conversation, when we're talking about these high level Masons, right? There's also talks of some occult stuff happening within those degrees, right? And what happens is that a lot of the people in the community like to, I guess, sensationalize these things, right? And especially what happens is there's been a lot of talk about this one character that I've been doing some research on is Albert Pike.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And Albert Pike, who apparently he is a 33-degree Mason, and apparently he wrote this letter like in 1871 called the Illuminati Plan for 3 World Wars, where he predicts the 3 biggest world wars that are going to happen. And it just breaks it down. It's kind of crazy how it's broken down, right? I've seen a lot of debate about this letter, but if you can explain to me, like, what is a 33rd degree Mason, and what's your opinion about this letter Pike to, I think is Mazzini, I think it's called.
Yeah. Okay. So this is like real deep, man. This is not surface level stuff.
Oh, that's
like
not surface level. Okay. All right.
We don't do surface level.
We can get deep. We can get deep.
I mean, yeah.
Let's go deep. Let's go.
You know what? We're in the deep end. Let's go.
Okay. The edging is over. Let's go.
So, okay, we've worked ourselves all the way to the tip. We're no longer on the shaft. So Albert Pike wasn't just a 30th Mason. He was kind of like the father of Scottish Rite Freemasonry in the United States. And so everything that I say from here going forward, if you got like a comment section or whatever, anyone that's maybe very highly critical Masonry is just going to be like, everything this dude's saying is a lie. So I'll try to beat all those to the punch, and I'll be like, here's what people think, and here's what I understand. So the first one off the bat is Albert Pike is kind of the father of American Freemasonry, and one of the slogans of Scottish Rite Freemasonry in particular is "Order ab chaos," which means order out of chaos. So the conspiracy theorist version of this, which I do think has some grit, is that Masons create chaos in order to establish order from it. So like if I'm the source of the chaos, then I know where it's coming from and I kind of have more control over it. Therefore, if I impose my order and I tell everyone else, I don't know why things are so chaotic, this is crazy, right? Maybe if you give me some power, I can solve it. Oh, crazy, I solved it. I'm going to keep this power. That's sort of like a very dumbed down version of what the conspiracy theorist version of order ab chaos and all this is. The other way that I've heard it described is from within Scottish Rite Freemasonry teachings, is that prior to Albert Pike standardizing Scottish Rite Masonry, it was almost like door-to-door salesman style. Like someone might legitimately knock on Jose's door and be like, "Pop, pop, pop. Hey, how you doing, Jose? Are you in the Freemasons? No, would you like to be? Well, for the low price of $70, I'll confer you right now all the way up to degree 30." And then you're like, great, what a great deal. Sure, let me think about it, come back tomorrow. But then like 5 minutes later, a dude knocks on your door and he's like, pop. Hey, you want to be in the Freemasons? Oh, someone already offered you? Well, guess what? I can offer you up to degree 35 and we're only $55. And then another guy, pop. And you can see how this escalates. It's like the next guy always has one more degree to sell you for a little bit less, or like this little perk. So long story short, Albert Pike is largely responsible for standardizing it. And I'm oversimplifying some of this, but basically you're not allowed to solicit. You can't go and knock on people's doors. You can't charge money for it to get into it. And even more than that, he standardized it. So like you can't offer 36 and you can't offer 20 and you can't do this. There's just going to be 33 degrees period in the Scottish Rite, and no one can deviate from that. And this is where the Scottish Rite Supreme Council essentially comes from. It's like, we're the ones that say there's 33 degrees in Scottish Rite, period, full stop. And anyone that wants to confer Scottish Rite degree masonry in America, you have to also agree to this. And they kind of did. This largely happened. This also ties into the original KKK too, by the way, but that's a whole other tangent. So that's one aspect of Albert Pike. So he's like the big daddy in American Scottish Rite Freemasonry. His power doesn't necessarily extend outside of America or anyone that doesn't care about Scottish Rite. And just to add an extra little nuance here is, even if you join the Scottish Rite Freemasonry, it doesn't necessarily mean that anything that you believe or follow or anything you read will necessarily come from Albert Pike in particular, although he wrote Morals and Dogma, and Morals and Dogma is that thing. That is the standardization of Scottish Rite Freemasonry that basically says, like, here's the general premise, but there's not like an extra thing that says, or, you know, you have to do this or else. So it's a complicated topic.
Why does that sound like Scientology?
It kind of is, dude. The whole concept of like rising through the degrees, and each degree you learn a little bit more. Again, if you think about it like Cub Scout badges, like, you know, the 32nd degree is, you know, your nautical knots, and the 31st degree is that you can identify poisonous plants, and it's sort of like that, as opposed to like climbing up these stairs where each one's higher than the other one. Like once you get to the 3rd degree in masonry, everything else is essentially like an extra patch, except for the 33rd degree. And the 33rd degree is usually an honorary degree. So this is like either your PhD or your special recognition, your valedictorian, MVP equivalent within Freemasonry. It's usually given to someone to denote that they've contributed greatly to the craft that's going to outlive them as a person. That I'm simplifying this as much as I can for, you know, conversation's sake.
It's like being called like a grandmaster in a martial art or something. It's like, yeah, you've been practicing your whole life and now you're 90 and we're just going to give you this extra fancy belt just because you've been doing it forever.
Kind of. Well, you also have to do something though. You usually have to perform some kind of a great work, which is why I equate it almost to like a PhD in a way, where like you have to leave some kind of lasting impression. Now, that lasting impression, for example, if you guys watch Seinfeld, Kramer, right? I believe he was made 33rd degree, but it was just because he happened to be a Scottish Rite Freemason and he happened to be really popular and got famous. And just because he impacted American culture on such a high level, that's like a shoo-in. Like, here you go, here's your 33rd degree. A lot of astronauts that set foot on the moon, Neil Armstrong, Buzz, I almost call him Buzz Lightyear. But all these guys that end up going there, also part of the Adventures Club, they usually just get 33rd degree. It's like, dude, you're killing it. Like, here's your 33rd degree. Now you can also like focus on it and have contacts and like put in petitions and work your way towards it. So again, though, it's kind of like an honorary thing that shows that you went above and beyond to like get that final degree.
So, okay, we have the degree system and how to climb through the ranks. Where does the occult kind of come into the whole Freemasonry thing? Because from an outsider's perspective that doesn't know much, right? Like, it just looks like a bunch of dudes who do business together, learn a bunch of other crap, and help each other out for the most part, right? On its face level. Where does the occult and all the weird crap and Illuminati kind of get injected into Freemasonry?
I would say day one, dude. Step one, the second you enter the lodge, it's all occult, because occult basically just means something that's hidden. So one of the cheesiest phrases ever, but a lot of Freemason lodges will say, we're not a secret society, we're a society with secrets, which basically means that you can look up where your Freemasonic lodge is in your town in the Yellow Pages, and you can drive by and there's a big sign on the front. Like, it's not a hidden thing. So it's not necessarily a secret society. They're not hiding from anyone, but they claim to have like secret knowledge that nobody else has access to. That's the secret part. So right off the bat, I'd say like the occultism starts because you go in there and it's all about symbolism. And even as you go through the 3 different degrees, everything is symbolic. In fact, Masonry itself, it's basically a symbolic craft because it's named after very real Masons, like the actual bricklayers, the ones that knew how to take these incredible chunks of, earth and rock and polish it down into like these perfect ashlar cubes and build off of that. But over time, like, not everyone's going to be a great carpenter, right? Not everyone's going to be a great mason, but they wanted to take the same premise of like, oh, you're taking this raw material that's got all these jagged edges, this diamond in the rough style, and you make it smooth enough to create these incredible chapels and cathedrals and these impressive buildings. So that turns into a metaphor for like how about you, like me, like I might be this jagged rock right now, but how can I turn myself into this perfect ashlar cube that can then build this perfect foundation, good things on top of it? So that's what you call speculative Freemasonry versus operative. Operative meaning you're a real Mason, like you're actually out there polishing rocks and doing the real work. Speculative Freemasonry, which is what all Freemasons are today, these are the ones that take what like those teachings were, but they just apply it in their normal life. Like you can be an office worker and call yourself a Mason without ever touching a piece of brick in your life. So I would argue that the occultism starts right off the bat, and then you can kind of dial it up depending on which route you go. So this is all subjective, but I've heard that if you're like really big into Bible, or like you're very religious or Christian, you want to touch on some of those roots, or you're interested in like Knights Templar, York Rite can kind of like scratch that itch. And then Scottish Rite, that one goes a little bit more towards like Eastern Oriental mysticism. So again, like I would say that's all occult, but I would also say that if you walk into a Catholic church and look around, like that's all occult too. Every single statue, every single stained glass, it's all occult.
Absolutely. I mean, the Catholic Church is riddled with a lot of occult stuff. I mean, if you go back into history and you look at, what Constantine did, he pretty much disguised all the paganism into Catholicism. So it's already in there, right? So, I mean, so it's not that different. But what's very interesting about the Masons and the secret societies, or a society that has secrets, that
it's so dumb. The saying is so dumb.
Oh, I know, but what's interesting is that the amount of influence that's out there that people don't know. It's like, for example, for me, like I didn't know about this stuff until like a few years ago, right? But now that I know about this stuff, I see it absolutely everywhere, in commercials, in music, in movies, and in every aspect of your life. It's there, right? So, and when I say that, for example, like in music videos, a lot of these rap artists or even metal artists, they like to use a lot of symbolism in their videos. And it kind of all goes back to Masonic stuff, like the checkerboard floors or the columns or the red, white, and black, to kind of like go back to the Knights Templar. So how does the Masons have so much influence in pop culture, man?
I would actually spin this, and we're gonna get back to the letter too, by the way. But the way that I would spin this is that all the pop culture influence in my mind really comes from Aleister Crowley. And Aleister Crowley, he was conferred, he was made a Freemason, but I think that like he was a little too wild for them. They were a little bit more reserved than what he wanted to get into. He was like, dude, let's get into the sex, magic, and mescaline. Where are you guys at? And they're like, I got a wife at home, and I've got kids, and I've got this like business to uphold. And he's like, all right, I'm going to go and do my own thing. And then he goes and he finds the Golden Order of the Hermetic Dawn, I believe. And he chills with them for a while. And again, they're like, dude, like we're crazy, but this dude is like way crazy. We can't hang with him. So then he decides to go off and make his own thing, Thelema. And this is kind of like this progression, but really Aleister Crowley in my mind is the actual source of all the fascination with occultism in pop culture, pop media, music, This is him. He said that everyone's a star. What does that sound like? The whole premise of like being pop stars. He was cited extensively with the Beatles. The Beatles put him on their Sgt. Pepper Lonely Heart Band background. You see him in there because this guy was one of the very first. If you imagine this like old Victorian age where everyone was so reserved, and he said, "Screw that! Like I'm a god. I'm my own god. I'm going to do my own thing. Me." And this was sort of like a brand new concept to be such flippantly and outwardly narcissistic and proud of it and not hiding it and being shameful about it. And I mean, that's kind of describing, you know, modern celebrity culture now, worldwide, not just in America. But I really do think that that's where all this occult influence comes from. It's essentially from Aleister Crowley and his propensity to just be a self-promoter.
Yeah, you can see him right over there in the top left corner. He's right there in that corner, right there in that Beatles cover. That's crazy, man.
So I think that's where a lot of it comes from. But then where the real Masonic influence comes from, I mean, Masons founded the damn country. You know, if you look at the people that signed the Declaration of Independence, a lot of them were already Freemasons. They were aware of the Bavarian Illuminati. There's a letter, I think the John Robinson letter, or someone that George Washington was writing to, talking about the Bavarian Illuminati. And he was basically hand waving it off like, nah, don't worry. Like, they're not that big here. Like, between the lines, it's like, nah, Freemasons are still running this country. Don't worry about it. So Freemason influence in politics and the founding of this country and almost every other modern Western European country, I think that's almost like settled science. That's not even conspiracy theory or anything. I mean, even George Washington and the original rebels, they were meeting in Freemasonic lodges to talk about these things. And actually, one of the original premises of Freemasonic lodges in America, it wasn't that they went and built a brick and mortar that you could drive by and see the big sign. The original Freemason lodges were like, hey, tonight after the tavern closes at the end of the street, we're all going to hang out. And after about 2 hours, after we're sure everyone's gone, we're going to have a secret meeting and we're going to talk about how we're going to overthrow the British, you know, in this certain area. That was the original lodge. And then once they overthrew that particular, you know, British whoever, general or whoever was running the show, then that lodge would cease to exist. So lodges almost existed to like serve a purpose. And then once that
Like
purpose was served,
cells.
the lodge would close down.
Like sleeper cells.
I mean, kind of, but a sleeper cell would be someone that was sent here from like an external sort of camp and then were like activated. This is almost like they're already here. They're like turning themselves into like secret American agents to beat back the British in that case.
Now, explain the difference between a Mason, for, you know, how you've already prefaced it, versus this Bavarian Illuminati. This is the first time I hear about Bavarian Illuminati.
So Bavarian Illuminati is where I think you should start if you want to learn about secret societies in the West, at least. They're not the first, but they set the freaking template going forward. So Bavarian Illuminati, this is going to sound wild, dude. It was founded in 1776. If that number sounds familiar, it's also the exact same year that America was allegedly founded. There's even some weirder conspiracy theory. You see that picture of him on the top right? That's Adam Weishaupt. He was the founder of the Illuminati. Some people claim that that might be George Washington. I think it's silly, but they both have the funny wig and stuff. But
I don't see it. I mean, the
I
wig,
don't see it either.
but I don't see it.
Shout out Donut. I know Donut likes that one. Shout out Donut.
Shout out to Donut. We got to get Donut here on Cultura Truth Project, man.
In the most simple terms, the Bavarian Illuminati, they use the academic system to gain influence with like the bright young kids that were off to college for the first time, and they planted these revolutionary ideas in their mind about overthrowing culture and society and politics and just running the game. But on top of that, what the Bavarian Illuminati did was it created one of the first ones that we still know of today of like this international intelligence agency. So if you look at every single secret society, it's basically just the CIA by any other name. All they are intelligence agencies. So the Bavarian Illuminati, they end up recruiting all these different kids from school. And then from there, once those kids get out into the world and become these like academic leaders or experts in their fields, they're all reporting back to this one dude, Adam Weishaupt. Imagine this dude sitting at the top of a big pyramid, right? So if you call up Adam Weishaupt and you're like, yo, Adam, hey, do you know how to make, mercury into this other element? Or do you know how to, transmute these metals? Or ask him something about surgery. Hey man, my wife's foot needs to be removed. How do I do it? And he doesn't know, but if you call him, he knows everybody because he put together this network of experts. So you call up Adam and you're like, yo, Adam, I need to know 3 things. I need to know all about Ball and Moloch. I need to know about mercury transmutation. And I need to know about foot surgery. And since it's not instant, right? You write him a letter, you send your messenger off, and he's got a few days to like scour his network, and he responds to you and he's like, good thing you asked me because I know everything. Like, I'm the dude. Here's how you do the surgery. Here's how you transmute metals. And here's the answer on the other thing. And you're thinking like, dude, this guy knows everything. You know what I mean? So this is like the air that he is able to establish. And everyone at the top of that pyramid are basically everyone that has access to the Rolodex. So anytime a question comes up, they know the answer. They've got Google thousands of years, like 1,000 years before Google exists, right? Or 200 years, sorry. So having that ability to immediately know things and have answers, they just become this like superior force for authority. And it, at this perfect storm, at the same time, Freemasonry in Bavaria and Germany, they end up making this decision that says, hey guys, like, long story here, but the Masons love connecting themselves to the Knights Templar, because who wouldn't want to feel like a badass Knights Templar with like the shield and the broadsword? So for the longest time, Freemasons were connecting themselves and saying that we lineate all the way back to the Templars. At that time, the biggest lodge that was in Bavaria, they said, guys, like, we're not going to do that anymore. We can't find the proof. Some people are calling us out. It's making us feel silly and we can't back it up. So guess what? Like, nobody talk about Templars anymore. You're not allowed to talk about it. And as soon as they did that, there was a bunch of dudes that were like, man, I liked being a Templar. This kind of feels weak now. Like, I don't feel cool anymore. So the Bavarian Illuminati, they swoop in and they go to all these disgruntled Freemasons and like, hey, you hear that? What's this BS that we're not allowed to talk about Templar anymore? Hey, I know this other club that like, we are the Templars. Like, we're still running with the Templars. We still rep their crew, and we've got 99 degrees, bro. Oh, how many do you have?
What?
7, 10? Oh, that's cute. We got 99.
Like, Templars, bro. Templars, bro.
I mean, that's exactly kind of how the Bavarian Illuminati gets its big start, though, is they start cannibalizing all these splintered groups of people that are getting disgruntled because they're looking for other stuff. And Adam Weishaupt's like, yo, if you guys just want woo-woo mysticism and high-level degrees, I can do that all day long, bro. And he just starts telling people, like, we go up to 99 degrees and such, and he only had like 7 written. So he's this dude that's like selling you the product before he's made it. And you guys have worked in the corporate world and the internet, like, what this like vaporware concept is, where someone's like shopping around a TV show and like, oh yeah, like, we've got all these big names attached. Like, you haven't even called those people. You're waiting to see if a network will bite, and then you're going to be like, hey, I got this thing that the network wants.
Yep.
That's kind of what Weishaupt is doing behind the scenes. He's like selling these people this bill of goods, and then as soon as someone buys it, he's running back like crap, and like staying up all night making posters and PowerPoint presentations that are like, here's the 17th degree and 18th degree. So bro, this is the whole premise of the Bavarian Illuminati is enticing.
I have lost respect for all.
spirits.
I have lost respect for all secret societies just now. It's literally con men. It's literally con men. It's like, bro, I got all the answers. Then they go, hey, what's the answer to the universe?
I'll give you 111 degrees, bro.
well, think about it too. If you're talking to a king, right, or like some freaking duke that's got all the resources he needs, like, you can't promise him anything, but if you tell him you've got some secret knowledge that nobody else has got access to, like, it's such an easy sell. Because if you were talking about a car or a boat, or I've got this fancy horse, you'd be like, I can go and get a fancy horse, I can go get a boat, you know what I mean? But if you're telling him I got some knowledge, like, not only can, like, I can't prove it to you, the only way I can prove it to you is by teaching it to you, but it's too dangerous. It's too dangerous to just tell you right now. Like, you're gonna have to sign up for this 12-step program. We got monthly payment plans. But so this is all kind of like silly, but
It's like Kill Bill. Hey, I'll teach you how to stop somebody's heart with 5 fingers real quick. Blah, blah.
dude, I mean, it kind of is, man. I guarantee you, Adam Weishaupt at some point told someone that he was like, "I'll show you how to do the 5-finger death punch."
Oh my god!
And they were like, "Sign me up, I'm in."
Right. So while we're on this subject, we got the Bavarian Illuminati, we got the Freemasons. Where does the Bohemian Club come into all this? Because there's a lot of Freemasons at the Bohemian Club.
So Bohemian Club is its own thing. This is in California. It was founded in the late 1800s, I believe. And the long story short here is that there was a bunch of artists on the West Coast, and they were broke and they were poor, just like artists today. No different. And the way that they would get their money is that they would get commissioned by the big business owners, the big studios and the people that own the stores and all that. That's where they get all their money from. But they would get so burnt out for doing all this corporate work that some of them decided, hey man, like once a year, let's go into the woods and let's just work on artwork that we want to work on, and we'll just have fun. And it was fun, and it worked for about 1 year, and then they ran out of money because they're a bunch of artists and they didn't know how to raise money or save money or use money. So they've been basically go to one of their donors and they're like, hey, I know I usually have you guys, like, you have me paint your billboards or you have me do all this commercial work. We got this little camp out in the woods and we need a little bit of money in order to like throw it next year and make it big. Would you mind like coming on board? We'll let you attend if you help sponsor it. So this happens a few times, and these rich businessmen are like, yo, this is dope. Like, I love going out here in the woods. You guys are getting drunk and having fun. Like, we should do this. In fact, how much? And they're like, what do you mean how much? Like, this isn't for sale. This is like a retreat to get away from you rich people. And then as they're saying that, the rich guy already left and talked to the landowner and bought the land. And he's like, okay, this is ours now. And maybe if you're nice to us, we'll invite you back next year. So that's like the original origin story of Bohemian Grove. It was artists trying to escape the corporate, people that were paying them. And then they invited the corporate people, and the corporate people kicked them out of their own club because they liked it so much.
Oh my
so that's
God.
where it starts. And that's where it continues. Is it's basically this retreat where the big corporate and political heads of the country, they all go and they meet once or twice a year, and they just repeat this, like these weird bohemian pagan rituals that were established by the artist. And that's why it's called Bohemian Grove or Bohemian Club, is because it was originally a group of artists that considered themselves bohemians.
Interesting. So it's like a bunch of like new agey stuff, or I don't know. Sometimes like when I look at some of the pictures, like I was just showing, they have this big statue of an owl, right? Like it's a huge statue of an owl. And I don't know if that's like a deity or something, but what I have
Moloch
noticed,
the owl. Yeah, I was looking into that.
yeah. So what I've noticed is that a lot of these powerful people, whoever they may be, politicians, lawyers, people of influence, bankers, CEOs, whoever you want, whoever attends these things, these people tend to, and I'm not sure if they're Masonic or if they're Illuminati or not, but what I am certain of, because I've started digging into finance, and this is how I kind of ended up here, because I started looking into finance and millionaires and billionaires, and these people don't practice the same shit you and me do, right? Like they don't believe or follow the same things. They, calculate certain financial stuff during astrological dates and astrological alignments and things like that. So are these people like doing sacrifices, or are they praising some type of deity when they're at this festival?
Yeah, so they've got something called cremation of care, and the claim now is that they take an effigy of a human, meaning like a fake made out of a bundle of sticks, or
like Burning Man.
Burning Man is the normie version, or it's the Silicon Valley version of Bohemian Grove. And if you look at the history of Burning Man, it's the exact same story, where you've got these bohemians, these like anti-social, countercultural people go out into the desert, do this thing, it catches on. The silicon tech giants are like, hey, what's that cool thing you got going on over there? And then the next year it's like all tech giants that are like running the show, and it's man,
doing ketamine, LSD, and having sex parties while
that's it, bro. And that's exactly what Bohemian Club is, except that Bohemian Club's got better security than Burning Man, I think, and a slightly nicer area. But just the same concept of Burning Man is to take all your cares of the world, right, and just burn them in front of you. And it's supposed to be this cathartic process of releasing all your worries and your stress. That's literally why it's called cremation of care. Like they are burning the cares of the world. But in Bohemian Club, so the club is the group and then the grove is the place. So inside the Bohemian Grove where the club meets, they do this cremation of care, but their care is like the burden of being these rich, powerful people that maybe they make a decision. They decide to write a check to company A instead of company B, and 10,000 people lose their jobs, or 10,000 people die. You know, like these are major things that are weighing on their shoulders and their minds. So they go to cremation of care in order to kind of purify those feelings away from them. Now that's the surface level. Like we can get real deep on this one.
All right. So to kind of like give an example, it's like, let's say I'm a billionaire and I made another 200 million in, this last day, but, I had to lay off 100,000 people. I go to this ceremony and I burn my worries of laying off this 100,000 people, and I'm okay with it after the ceremony. That's basically in the simplistic form what you're saying.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, that makes sense why Elon Musk goes every year.
Well, and you also go there because you get the inside scoop. They've got these things called lakeside talks, and if you go to a lakeside talk at Bohemian Club, you've got some big power mover or someone that's got the inside scoop and tells you, here's what the next 4 to 10 years is going to look like. Here's new technology that's coming out. Here's some political movements that are happening. Just everything that doesn't get dispersed through C-SPAN or CNN or Fox. This happens at these lakeside talks. And this actually plays into like these Simpson prophecies where they're like, oh, the Simpsons, knew about this. Well, guess what? Harry Shearer is actually a member of Bohemian Club, along with a bunch of other people involved with the Simpsons. He's the voice of Mr. Burns, by the way, Montgomery Burns. And this is why, in my opinion, that's why Simpsons is so prophetic, because the dude's there, he hears the speeches, they tell him, here's what's happening over the next 4 to 10 years. And he kind of like adds these little nods into the Simpsons episodes. And you can go online and search for Bohemian Grove infiltrated or sneak into Bohemian Grove. And Alex Jones and a guy named Ron Johnson, they snuck in it was like 2 decades ago now. So they snuck into Bohemian Grove, they recorded it, they put out a VHS, it's on the internet now. And Harry Shearer, Mr. Burns, within a couple of years after that, he creates a movie called Teddy Bear's Picnic, and it's about a bunch of guys that go out into the woods and perform secret rituals, and somebody with a camera sneaks in and tries to release it. Like this is not even hidden, like, right? Like if you see the movie and you see what they're talking about, it's him admitting like, yeah, I'm in this club, these guys snuck in, we don't care, we're still going to keep doing it. Like, you guys are idiots, you're all normies.
Now, it's interesting that you just said that, because that's kind of transition perfectly into the next segment of the show, which we're going to be talking about like predictive programming now, because what I've noticed, and I pointed this out to my brother many times, is there's a lot of movies that are out that are predicting certain catastrophes. Like I think it was like last year, there was a movie called White Noise that came out, and it was about this train derailment out in I think it was Pennsylvania, East Palestine, Pennsylvania. And then I think it was like maybe 3 or 4 months later, there was a serious train derailment, and with chemical stuff all over that city in East Palestine, Ohio, not Pennsylvania, Ohio. Then I think recently there was this movie that just came out on Netflix, Leave the World Behind, with about cyber attacks and, basically the moment when the world goes to shit. And
produced by the Obamas,
right? And after that movie came out, there was a lot of cities that started having some cyber attack issues. I think there was some telecommunications stuff with the grid that was going on. And sorry, Danny, I didn't mean to remove you. I thought you had I thought you had your screen up. I was going to.
No, I am. I'm looking at something here.
Oh, no worries.
Keep going.
Anyways, so when I'm looking at some of the writers of these shows or the executive producers of these shows, and I do a little bit of digging of myself, and I find out that they're Masons or they're part of a group or they're connected to certain powerful people, right? Why are they doing this in the movies and in the TVs and in the commercials? Because it's really everywhere, right? Like they're kind of telling you what's going to happen ahead of time, and then it happens, and then people are like, "Oh no, it's so tragic," hopes and prayers, but they're not getting that visceral reaction that you're supposed to get. It's like it's almost like we're just desensitized.
I think the greatest example is that new movie that's coming out, Civil War. How long have we been talking about Civil War in America? For the past 5 years, 6 years now? Potential civil war with all the political divide, and now they're making a movie about it. So it's interesting.
Who do you think wins, shirts or skins?
I don't think anybody wins at this point, man. I think we're all going to be just a little gay at the end of it.
So I think that the predictive programming is so the conspiracy theorist approach I'll give you first. It's not the same as my thought, but the conspiracy theory is something called revelation of the method. Revelation of the method. It has this weird special rule set that's basically like, if I show you that I'm about to punch you before I punch you, then when I do punch you, like,
you can't get
I'm
mad
not
at
the bad
me.
guy. Like you saw it coming, so it's your fault now. In fact, I might have been doing you a favor by telling you that I was about to punch you, and even though I did, like, I told you about it, so I'm the good guy in this scenario. That's one aspect of it. Another aspect of the revelation of the method is this concept of like karmic debt. So if I just come up and just like slap you, if I come up and I steal like your wallet while you're not looking, now all of a sudden that might inflict negative karmic debt on me. Maybe someone's going to steal my wallet tomorrow, right? Because I've got this like karmic debt following me. But if I tell you, hey, Jose, I'm going to steal your wallet today, and you're like, no, please don't, man. I'd appreciate if you did it. I was like, I'm just telling you, man, I'm going to steal your wallet. Then it's almost like if you check later, I go home and you're like,
damn, you stole my wallet.
You know what I mean? But because I told you about it, again, it's like, it's debt free. It's karma free. And it's your fault because I told you what I was going to do and you let me do it anyways. So you must have wanted me to do it. So you were complicit, and it wasn't really me. It was mostly you. And this logic doesn't make sense to me. You know what I mean? Because if there's a power imbalance and you're like, hey, Jose, I'm going to shoot you. You know what I mean? Like, what does that mean? You just get to do it karmic free? But if you didn't say it and you shot me, then somehow like you go to hell faster, or the fire burns a little hotter. I don't think that that's how that works. So my opinion of it is that human ego comes in and everyone wants to be like, I called it. You know what I mean? Everyone wants to be that dude that was like, hey, bro, remember when the world completely fell apart? If you go back and listen in October, I did a podcast that said the world was going to end. Give me my credit, man. Give me my daps. Buy me a beer. I think that that's not to be discounted, that level of it, because people latch on to the predictive programming of like what actually happened. But if you go back and watch every movie that's ever come out, like how many things that did they predict that was wrong? And it's almost like this Nostradamus game of numbers thing where people used to give Nostradamus all this credit for predicting stuff. But if you go through and you give him like a batting average, like the dude was swinging like less than like 100 batting average, which is not good. You know what I mean? Like a decent batting average, I think, is 400s and up. Or at least that would be like
you're an all-star if you bat 300.
So okay, so Nostradamus was not batting 300. You know what I mean? He wasn't even batting 100. But because so many things that he said lined up with things that you could be like, maybe that was right. Like it makes it seem so incredible. But if you just sat down and wrote 1,000 predictions every day and only one came true a year, you kind of suck at it. But if you really promote that one thing you were right at, now all of a sudden it seems like you're a prophet.
Now you're Alex Jones.
Right.
Oh my God, I love this conversation, man. Because I mean, because it's just so out there. Because even like what's the TV shows, right? For example, and I'm gonna reference Donut on this. So shout out to Donut on this episode. He made a connection with the recent Miami Mall alien psyop situation that happened a few weeks ago.
Are we calling it psyop or just a bunch of gangbangers, bro? Come on now.
You know what? The internet talks about one thing. The news talks about anything.
It also said it was a Nephilim, so who knows?
Do you think there was a leprechaun in that tree? Do you remember the leprechaun in the tree story?
No, I don't.
No. Please enlighten us.
So if you go on, if you just look on YouTube or whatever, but leprechaun in the tree news story, there was this whole entire community where somebody claimed they saw a leprechaun hiding in a tree, and then someone else came and they agreed to it, and before you know it, there's like 100 people outside this tree, and the news pulls up, and it turns into like a huge event. And they've got an interview with a dude that says that he was handed down like these like weapons from his great grandfather, like a special flute, and people like lean into it and they have fun with it and they play with it. And once someone like from the outside observes that, they're like, oh my God, these guys, like, this is real. They thought this was real. And then that becomes a new momentum. That becomes its own wave where now like all the normies that weren't in on a joke, they're getting caught up in this wave of thinking, oh, those guys thought it was real. Maybe it is real. I don't know. I think it's hilarious how it all starts. I think the Miami Mall alien at the end of the day was because there was something Epstein related in the news. And they were like, let's go ahead and give this one a little bit of extra attention.
I know there's that, right? And I also think it's, you know, the skeptic in me always says, you know, what's the most plausible deal? You know, especially Jose and I used to live in Miami, you know, so we know how bad things can get when, you know, a couple of people start fighting. And if it's a true riot, yeah, you're going to have a big police response. But like, I was watching a lot of videos pertaining to the Miami alien deal. There was a couple of guys saying it was a Nephilim breaking through the space-time continuum. And I'm not saying that's not implausible, but, you know.
I'll say it's implausible. I'll say it.
But at the same time, I'm thinking, it was like, okay, but what is the most rational, you know, that makes the most sense? And, you know, like you said, what else came out that day that they want to be like, hey, look at this hand while I'm stabbing you with this hand? That's really where I lean into it. It's like, was there maybe a true, you know, brawl or something, and there was a bunch of crap happening on New Year's Day on Bayside Mall? Yes, something happened, but what else happened that day that the news media or, you know, the propaganda arm of the United States, it's like, hey, let's make this other thing the headline news so we can distract from what's really happening in the world.
I mean, but that's what the news is, right? The news is it's a broken compass, north, east, west, south. I mean, they're going to put a story that's not going to benefit them, but Miami's got a serious connection with like some weird shit, dude. Like, because in 2012, they had that zombie incident where that guy that was apparently on bath salts, which I'm convinced that he was not. This guy ate another guy's face off in the middle of the street in broad daylight.
It's a rough economy, bro. You seen the price of milk and eggs?
Bro, meat is expensive, bro.
Bro, it's bad. Well, not in Texas, because, you know, we slay our own cattle here. But, you know, it's okay. No, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I work my day job. I work in the pharmaceutical industry. So it's like I see what drugs does to people, and it's not besides me to see some dude that's jacked out on, you know, meth and bath salts, whatever they streets are calling them nowadays, and bite somebody's face off because he's tripping on some crazy shit. That doesn't surprise me. But, you know, zombies, I mean, I'm Hispanic. I do believe in zombies. So who knows?
I think people are weirder than zombies. I think they're more unpredictable. At least a zombie like has rules, right? If you see a zombie, you kind of like, you're allowed to stereotype a zombie. Like you already know like how they're gonna act, how they're gonna treat you. Like there's nothing racist or anything about like, oh, that zombie, like just kill him, right? He's an unperson. But when it comes to like drugs and bath salts and all this, I think that humans are way less predictable and people react in completely different ways that you might never expect.
I'm just saying, just go to any local pharmacy and watch the lady that shows up on the same day every time at 8:30 in the morning that's coming off of her Xanax, and you tell me she's not a zombie.
Shout out to Xanax.
Hashtag non-spawn. So, you know, as we're talking about, you know, the Masons and Illuminati and secret societies and people in power, you know, we just talked about the psyops, but, you know, one thing that came out recently is this whole Cat Williams interview that he was exposing all the people that were involved in some shady ass business involving the Epstein files. And there's been so much chatter on the internet about these Epstein files and the people connected to the Epstein files. And, this big ass, blood cult cabal of people that's involved with the Epstein files. So what do you first, what's your thoughts on the Cat Williams things exposing everyone, and two, your thoughts on the Epstein files?
I think Cat Williams, good on him for bringing attention to it, but I wonder what extra insider knowledge does he have specific to the case other than what everyone else is kind of already understands, but he's just using this crazy platform, huge platform, to bring it to normies, or at least say hey, let's talk about this again. I almost think the Cat Williams thing was the opposite of the Miami mall alien thing. He was yeah, Miami aliens. Hey, want to talk about Epstein again? It was, I feel like it was taking the ball back. He got it back onto our side of the court again. So shout out to Cat Williams for that aspect of it. Beyond that, I don't know how much insider info he has for the Epstein thing. And you were the blood rituals and the cult, we're talking Pizzagate at this point, right?
Yeah.
So
we did have somebody talking about human trafficking and the realities of it, last week. So, there's a lot to be said there.
Well, I think it's true. I actually think Pizzagate's true. I think that all of the blood rituals and Marina Abramovich and spirit cooking, I think that's all real. I don't know personally if the frazzle drip all the way to the end of that, Hillary was, cutting off someone's face and eating it. I don't know if it goes that far.
I could picture her doing it.
Absolutely. I could picture her doing it. I just don't know if they actually found that video on Wiener's laptop. I think that's a little bit of a stretch. It's possible. It would shock me, but it wouldn't surprise me. I'd put it that way. But I do think they are doing this stuff. They are doing blood rituals. I think that they are tapping into it, but they're convincing themselves, just like the Bohemian Club. They're oh, it's artists that were doing it. It's an art thing. We're just being artsy. And this actually makes us more cultured and just a higher level of understanding of the world, because we can do this edgy stuff and not get offended by it. So I think there's a very high aspect of that. And also, when you've got these politicians and these guys that are just into banking and making moves, they might not be as right brain, and they might not feel as creative and artistic, and they want that. There was almost a jealousy of wanting to have the things that I create. I want people to admire them, but unfortunately all the things I create cause pain and misery, and people hate me for it, even though I get rich off of it. And on the other end, you've got the artists that are not getting rich, but they're making people happy. So I feel the politicians, they're I want that to be mine. I want to buy that. So they do that by going to these spirit cooking rituals and acting like complete edgelords. And then they use that to up their artistic street cred in a way. But I think that there are also some behind the scenes that are hey, I didn't realize it, but this is my kink. This is my thing now. I kind of like seeing people mock sacrificed and pretend I'm eating people. If I hang around after all the caterers go for a couple hours, is there a more, I don't know, like a edgier version of this? And they're yeah,
we're just gonna make a whole art piece out of period blood and then call it, art.
Ew.
Well, and then someone's in the back I understand. You got anything edgier? There's always that guy that's what if I give you another 100K? Then what is it? Then is it still period blood? Tell me, what kind of blood is it? What if it's another?
Well, this is period blood and semen of children.
Oh my God,
it's weird. It's to me, man. It's the psyop portion of this is how ridiculous can we make some of these stories sound, so we distract the populace from what's really going on, right? We're enamored by the Epstein files. We're enamored by the Clintons and potentially their human trafficking ring or whatever. But how many things are actually happening behind the scenes? Jose's into finance, the whole transition from, the dollar to crypto here in the next month, and all these other things that are happening at a global scale that are affecting us on our day-to-day basis, but are being almost like a ninja, like the smoke in her face. It's like, hey, pay attention to Epstein and all these weird child sacrifices. It's like there's so many things happening and we're being distracted. And to me, it's all a distraction. It's like, okay, but why are they putting out these stories now? Because when it was relevant and the guy was alive, they did everything to hide it. Now that the guy is dead, oh, well, now we can talk about it.
Well, this could be revelation of the method, and this could also be, since they've got this allegedly dead guy. I don't even know if I'm convinced that he's dead, but with him dead and no one else really going to court over this, Ghislaine Maxwell being like the only other fall person. But it's like, if they were the pimps, then who were the Johns? Like, aren't we going after the Johns? But you don't really have to, because you got the guy, he's dead. They came out with the Sound of Freedom movie. So anyone that was like really feeling a certain way about this thing, they read the article, they see the movie, and they're like, okay, now I can go get my Big Mac and go back to life again. Like, thank God that Hollywood solved this for me. They sent them out, they killed the bad guys, life goes on. But in reality, like, the only thing that changed is 2 people went to jail, and all of the people that were using the services are still out there. They're probably still using the services. The Rolodexes still exist. Like, all of that exists.
Now it's not
though.
Epstein. Now it's some other guy that is in those same circles that the CIA is using to blackmail and extort.
Well, and dude, we started out and you said that you had just recently found out about the Bavarian Illuminati. Well, one of the other really interesting things about the Bavarian Illuminati is that once you joined their order, it was like, if they picked you for that, you wouldn't say no, because this was the most prestigious club that could ever invite you ever. And if you said no, then you were never going to be asked again. So once you were in, you would make a big deal out of it and want to stay in and do whatever they told you. And one of the things they told you to do, they would assign you. They'd be like, yo, Daniel, we need you to spy on this guy, Jose. Just write down where he goes, who's he spending time with. Has he said anything particularly a little bit offensive or outlandish? Just take complete notes on everything. And while you're at it, go ahead and write down anything that you're doing that maybe is a little bit off kilter. Like, we want to know about you too. So tell us all your dirt and tell the dirt about Jose. And then they obviously don't tell Jose this, but then they go to Jose and they're like, yo, Jose, we're thinking about maybe letting you join our club, but we want you to follow this guy Daniel around and let us know, is he doing anything weird? Is he like talking about? So all of a sudden you've got all these people that are in the same club that are spying on each other because they don't know that they're in the same club. And on top of that, you are actually expected to write down like anything that you did wrong. You yelled at your kid, or you stole something from the store, or you didn't do something that you were supposed to. You would write this down and report it back to the Illuminati. Well, guess what? They're just using this to compile blackmail. So the second someone gets out of line, they're like, hey, Jose, you don't know this, but we know where you were at on this night. They don't tell you that it was Daniel that was tracking you, but they know. So they've got all the dirt on you. And now just times 100, that's basically what Epstein's blacklist was. It was, let's get dirt on people so that we can use them to keep them in line if they ever want to get out of line. And some people played along with that game. They were like, yeah, fine, record me. I don't care. I get to come here every weekend and do whatever I want. Record away. You know what I mean? If I ever get caught up, fine. Like, I'd rather have you guys as friends than not be here and walk the straight and narrow.
Interesting that you say that about the invitations. So last year, I was on Instagram and I got this random message from this lady who's apparently an influencer here in Orlando. And I'm gonna show the message, but I blacked out her name and everything else about this person.
Has it got nipples in it still?
No. But it's interesting because look what it says there. Illuminati invitation. Based on the membership criterion of the Illuminati, we find you are in great interest of possession of the good mastery of manual dexterity and academic proficiency. With this, we look at you as the class that will be the platform of which you stand to meet the wealthy people who can raise you to wealth, power, fame, and glory. I strongly recommend that you join us in the Illuminati. Joining us, you become wealthy and live the life you desire. Do you accept the offer? Obviously, I did not answer that because I I have no
If
idea.
You know what's funny?
respond
You know
to
what's
that-
funny? I think those are bots because I've gotten 3 of those invitations from 3
Oh
different
yeah,
accounts.
you've got those.
I've gotten those. One was like a legit like Illuminati like picture, and then the other 2 were like random like profiles. And then they go, "This is the last offer." And then like a few months later, I get another one, and I'm like, "Oh well, I guess these are bots. I don't know." You know,
Act now, 10% off.
it's-
10%.
it's
Anybody
bad.
can join the Illuminati. Apparently, it's a membership. You just pay for it.
You know what's funny is I get those too, but I also, in addition to those, I get the inverse where I get people messaging me that are like, "Hey, I've wanted to join the Illuminati my whole life. Like, who do I contact? Who do I reach out to?
What?
How do I join the Illuminati?" I swear I can open it up right now. I've got like a list of inbox messages specifically of people that want to join the Illuminati. I feel if I was a different man, I'd be like, "Send 1 Bitcoin to this address at exactly 1:11 a.m. on 1/11." You know what I mean? Like I'd be all cryptic.
Oh my God.
On this astrological date that coincides
dude.
with Pluto.
At
going
the
into
beginning of Yom
Aquarius.
Kippur, I need you to sacrifice 3 lambs and do this right before you join the Illuminati.
It's out there for the picking, and the fact that those messages exist means that people are falling for it. Like there's people out there that are like, "Okay, how much? $50? Sure." You know what I mean?
Let this serve as a public service announcement. People, don't fall for those damn messages. The Illuminati ain't gonna reach out to you on Instagram. That's for sure. I'm gonna tell you that much.
Well, maybe
going
they do.
back really
Maybe that's how they do it now. Maybe that's how they do it now, Jose. Maybe it's a
they
psyop.
Snapchat you. Maybe these
Now
people
the Illuminati
overshare.
slides into your DMs. That's how they recruit.
Like, hey, yo, D, you got you got that big D, bro, and we want that in the
Hey, yo, I
Illuminati,
got this
bro.
all seeing eye looking all over, yo.
So at the beginning, we were talking about Bohemian Grove, and one of the things that I noticed about Bohemian Grove, it's mostly Republican politicians that are that go there. I mean, there are some like CEOs and things like that, but that also gives me this question: do the Democrats have like their own type of Bohemian Grove and secret society ordeal?
Yeah, so Bohemian Grove or Bohemian Club, that's not necessarily limited to one party or the other. So there's definitely Democrats and Republicans that both attend, although you're 100% right that it leans very heavily Republican, but I think that's also just like if all your homies are in it and they invite you into it, like you're probably all Republicans anyway, so it kind of goes that direction, but it's not a requirement, and there's been plenty of people on both sides that get into it. The other aspect of that too is that if you look at, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Skull and Bones, the Skull and Bones Society at Yale, right? So that's like a tinier, like a microcosm version of Bohemian Club with lots more rules, way more like ways, like you can only get into that if you also go to Yale. You also have to get tapped in a class of 15. They only tap, I think it's like 15 people a year. So it's very rare and a very tiny chance that anyone would ever get into Skull and Bones. So the same thing exists there, where there's a lot of Republicans, but we also had a presidential election that had John Kerry and George W. Bush, right? Democrat versus Republican, but they were also both in the Skull and Bones. So these secret societies, as far as I know, there's none that only cater to Democrats and ones that only cater to Republicans. Because I think at that high level, like the dudes could just jump between teams if they wanted. They do. Like some politicians, they'll realize like, oh, I'm not getting the votes that I want, or I could get more votes if I jump camp, and they'll just straight up be like, yesterday I was a Democrat and today I'm a Republican. Here I am, everyone, and they eat it up. So I don't think that delineation exists the same.
So like I wonder, right? When you see these big people of power joining, the Skull and Bones and stuff like that, what's the end game? Is it just power, or is it just influence, or like are they like part of a bigger master plan of world domination? Like at the end of the day, if you join a team, a football team, your goal is to win the championship. What if you join that team? What's the end goal?
Well, the sports analogy falls down a little bit though, because you can just buy someone and put them on your team, and they don't even necessarily have to become acclimated with the rest of the team. There's been plenty of examples where they'll go out and they'll buy a freaking prima donna unicorn, and they don't mesh with the team, but when they show up on the court, they get points, and you get a ring, even if you don't necessarily mesh. But when you talk about these secret societies, first of all, they usually join before they've got the power. So if you're joining Skull and Bones, then you're in college, so you haven't even ventured out into the real world per se yet, right? Like you're still kind of like getting your footing. So you start there, and it's almost, and they don't necessarily have to pick you if you're powerful. That obviously is a big thing, but it's about building legacy, I think. So yeah, the football team legacy doesn't exist as much, because if you're a football player, you're not thinking like, yeah, my son's going to play on this team and his son's going to play on this team, because that doesn't exist. You're going to go whatever team ends up drafting you or offering the most if you're a free agent. So that if you remove that and you turn it into like, if I want my kid to go into power, if I want my kid to have a chance of becoming president or the head of the CIA, not just a worker, like the head of the thing, then their chances of being able to do that thing go up dramatically higher if they're in the Skull and Bones. So some people craft their entire lives around getting their kid to follow this legacy path. And you can relate the same exact thing to what we were talking earlier, not as college Freemasons, but as like these college fraternities. The same thing happens where it's like, I was an Appa Delta whatever, my kid's gonna be one and his gonna be one, and they call that like, I'm legacy, like my dad was one, so I'm kind of a shoe-in. That's, I think, the big difference. And that's also where these secret societies really show some of their weight, because regular, like Cub Scouts, no one's doing legacy Cub Scouts, no one's doing legacy sports teams, but you might do legacy secret society. You might do, some people do it on a lower level where they're like, well, my dad went to Yale, so I'm going to go to Yale. That's cute, but did your dad go to Yale and get tapped to be in Skull and Bones? Because that's a whole extra level of legacy that normie people don't really get access to.
Yeah, and Yale is older than the country. I mean, Yale is older than the founding of the country, because the country was founded in 1776-ish, right around there. And this has been way before that. So Skull and Bones has been around before United States of America. So that's how old this society is.
And just like Bavarian Illuminati, they started with a stranglehold on academia. Like they're basically like, we're going to control the flow of information. Or if you want to seem like you're prestigious and that you've gone to the best of all the educational institutions, that's kind of where they put their stranglehold. The same thing that the Bavarian Illuminati did.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
Well, Jose, we picked the wrong line to work. That's all I'm saying.
they're looking to recruit in all angles, though, man. They need someone in every field. That's the whole point.
I mean, they already got one of the prominent Puerto Ricans. They got Bunny already, so he's already part of it.
They already checked their diversity box. We don't fit. Come on now.
Yeah.
And
they already got one Puerto Rican. That's too many.
Before you start wrapping up anything, I just want to make sure we don't skim over the Mazzini Pike letter. So to put a little feather in that cap, I'll just put my heart on my sleeve. I think that's complete hoax, and it's not because I'm a defender of Albert Pike. If anything, if someone could prove that letter was real, that would be groundbreaking. I would love for that letter to be real, because it would prove all these extra conspiracy theories and that there's this extra level of cohesion and orchestration that I still don't necessarily believe exists. So if that were proven to be true, like, I welcome it, because that makes the world more interesting. Unfortunately, I think that particular letter was, if you try and look at the source of it, the letter, as far as I know, doesn't exist. What exists is a book that talks about the letter, but even that book is just referenced by another book. So it's like, yo, I got a friend that told me his friend told him that Albert Pike wrote this letter to Mazzini, and they were talking about World War III. That's kind of the level of
old world
teacher. So it's pretty much hearsay. It's document based.
It's worse than hearsay. It's even worse than hearsay.
It's old world chisme. That's all that is.
It sort of is, but it's worse than hearsay, because the Mazzini and Pike letter is likely a source by a guy named Leo Taxel, and Leo Taxel was itself a pseudonym. It was a pen name for this French atheist writer. And this guy in the late, I think it was like 1885 or something, he writes this book called Mysteries de la Freemasonry, and he claimed to expose all these crazy things. He said that they were worshiping Baphomet, they were doing blood sacrifices, like just anything that you remember from the 1980s Satanic Panic, that was also the 1880s Satanic Panic. People just don't know about it. The same thing happened. And at the end of it, it gets all the way to the Pope, right? The Vatican ends up being like, this is nuts. You're saying that there's people right now that are worshiping Baphomet and doing blood rituals. This is nuts. Get Leo Taxel in here. Let's talk about this. And when he shows up, they ask him who his source is, and he points to his freaking typewriter, as in like, haha, got y'all. Like, y'all thought that, you know, people were doing all this crazy stuff.
Man, old world Babylon B. I love it.
And not, yeah, dude, Leo Taxel was 100% old world Babylon B. That's the best way to put it.
I love Danny's way of saying it. Old world cheese.
Old world cheese, man.
I can imagine Leo Taxel coming in. Oye, mijo, did you hear what Albert Pike talked about? Eso está cabrón. Let's go.
He was like, listen, Fulgencio said that he's part of the Illuminati. Do you believe him? No. Fulgencio sits in the street corner taking dumps at the end of the day. Look, man, it was honestly, man, I know that we're running short on time here pretty soon, but dude, I guess let's wrap up with some of this Disney stuff, man, that you talked about. Some of that occult stuff that you wrapped up on. What is like the most, I guess, creepy, weird symbolism that you've seen in a Disney movie that most people don't know about? Because, you know, I've seen some of the dick stuff from back in the day and all this stuff and the rituals and some of the older movies, but like, what's something that you've seen that you're like, fuck, that's just straight creepy?
So a lot of them aren't necessarily, like, I wouldn't be able to just bring up like a screenshot and point at it so that you'd see it and be like, wow, that is really creepy. A lot of it is the backstory that goes into how certain movies were made, like the people that were involved in the movies. So I'll give you like my top three, and we can keep going after that if you want to do more. So the creepiest one to me is just the whole story of Beauty and the Beast. So Beauty and the Beast, the real premise of that, if you wind back the original inspiration for the written story, it was basically, you're gonna send, you know, imagine that you're in the 1500s or the 1400s, whatever. You're going to send your 14-year-old daughter off to be wed to some 45-year-old ruffian that's like never showered, never shaved, just an absolute brute, but he comes with a dowry. Or if you marry your daughter off to him, you get part of the land or whatever. Very common, right? These like arranged marriages. But then what would happen is like the mom would be like, honey, I know it's your 14th birthday and you were expecting a pony, but you've got something a little bit different than a pony. You're gonna be wed off to this 45-year-old man that doesn't brush his teeth ever. He's gonna look like a monster. He might consider him like a beast. But if you just, you know, cook and clean and dance and be nice to him, there might be a prince deep down inside there somewhere. That is 100% the real story of Beauty and the Beast. Was you needed a way to like smooth in this conversation of like, hey, honey, sorry, we wed you off to a 45-year-old burly man, and you're just a child. Here's how you're going to deal with it. You're going to read this book about, you know, dancing and doing dishes and cooking and cleaning, but it's magical. There's magic involved. So that one's creepy. Another one that's creepy is The Sword and the Stone, which used to be my absolute favorite Disney movie of all time. I loved every part about it. I still like the movie, but I can't claim it as my favorite anymore. And it's really creepy because the guy that wrote it, the original story of Sword in the Stone, he had a fascination with like little boys. And if you go back, and he never wed, and he basically was this recluse, and he would like entice other people's children to come and like hang out with him. And he developed all very weird and inappropriate relationships with like young boys. And if you watch The Sword and the Stone, it's about a freaking old dude that lives in the woods and essentially entices this little orphan away from his family and does magical things with him that he's not allowed to tell other people about. It's freaking weird, man. It hits a little bit different when you know that that's the real backstory of that.
I am contemplating telling this joke right now, but let's just let the silence speak for itself, because that's nasty. That's nasty. Yeah, he was putting his sword in other places. That's what he was doing.
The veil has been lifted, ladies and gentlemen.
And then
the veil has been lifted.
I guess the
All right, what's
third
the last
one
one, Paranoid?
it's less salacious, but I think it's the most nefarious. So people are like, "Oh, there's dicks in the castle in Little Mermaid," or the feathers and the dust spells out the word sex in Lion King. And I would just like take a step back, right? Let's think of it as rational human beings. You walk in and you see your kid watching Lion King, and for 3 frames, not even a fraction of a second, right? The word sex maybe shows up on screen long enough for you to notice it and then goes away. What's the permanent programming MK Ultra damage that Disney just did to your kid by showing the word sex for 0.01 seconds? Like how much did that change your kid's brain for the rest of his life? Okay, I would argue not much, a lot. A little. Okay.
I mean,
Now
I am
let's
33.
compare that.
I am 33 and a weird, and a Scorpio, so whatever that means
Illuminati
to people.
confirmed 33. But now compare that exact same level of programming and nefariousness, whatever, to what I've been calling the Disney proxy. It's not, I didn't invent this, but it's what I've latched onto. And the Disney proxy is that in the first 10 to 15 minutes of every Disney movie, they show you your authority figure. It's the parent of the protagonist, or it's like the adult of the situation, whatever it is. And within 10 to 15 minutes, they either die, they get kidnapped, or the child gets kidnapped, or they run away, or they get separated from this authority figure, and they are immediately plunged into complete uncertainty. And then the thing that takes them out of that uncertainty is this happy little, here, all I've got is this guy here. But imagine like you're in complete uncertainty, and then all of a sudden this little sidekick shows up, and they're like, I'm here to save the day. I can help you. I can guide you back to your family. And they become like the hero / sidekick. And now guess what? That hero / sidekick is going to be on lunch pails. It's going to be Happy Meal toys. It's going to be on t-shirts. It's going to be on backpacks. And to me, that concept of like showing a child, 5-year-old kid, hey, here's this authority figure. Up, they're gone now. You're scared. You don't know what to do. Up, now you know what to do because Thumper's here. Or now you know what to do because Sebastian the Crab is here. They're going to help you. Now, guess what happens when that kid sees Sebastian out in the wild? Oh, that's my buddy. That's my friend that helped me when I was lost. When mommy left, when mommy died, Sebastian was there to help me. And I think that is magnitudes of order different in terms of like nefarious programming versus showing someone the word sex on the screen for 3 seconds, or showing a dick castle to somebody. Like, again, that's like, look what's happening over here. Don't mind the fact that for the last 2 hours, we've been indoctrinating your kid to just purchase Disney products, officially licensed Disney products nonstop for the rest of their life.
But you know what, Paranoid Thomas, dude, I am so glad that you came onto the show, bro. So grateful that you had some time to spend with us. Guys, make sure you follow Thomas, the Paranoid American, at Paranoid American. And make sure you go and get his stuff at paranoidamerican.com. Make sure you get the comics. Make sure you get the stickers. Make sure you get all those goodies. Get it right now at paranoidamerican.com. Make sure you follow the podcast wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts. Leave a 5-star review. Make sure you do that, please. And also follow Gonzalez Media TV on Facebook, on Instagram, and follow the show on YouTube and on Rumble. So anything else you want to plug in there, Paranoid?
chosenjuan.com. You had Juan on recently, so if you go and you want to support Juan and my own comic book endeavors, you can go to chosenjuan.com, and we'll got issue 2's coming out. It's got Sam Tripoli in it. It's got Alex Stein in it. It's got a whole bunch of cameos.
Bro,
yeah,
that's amazing.
Right,
pretty soon you're gonna have a Poppy the Comic cameo. Watch, I'm gonna be up there doing weird things.
That's the goal, man. Is essentially, I would love to have just anyone that wants to be in a comic at some point. It's not rocket surgery.
And you guys can show the support by going to paranoidamerican.com, and in there they got the links to the Kickstarter, and they got issue number 2 for Chosen Juan coming up very, very soon. So make sure you guys show the support at paranoidamerican.com. So, mi gente, eso es todo por el show de hoy. Los quiero. Un abrazo a todos. Asegúrense de seguir el show. Follow the show. And we'll see you guys the next time. Love you guys. Nos vemos.
Love you. Bye.